I returned home from a grueling business trip expecting a warm welcome, but my key wouldn't turn. Through the living room window, a perfectly symmetrical ficus tree stood where my lopsided plant should have been, a silent omen that my entire life had just been stolen. The first thing I noticed was the ficus tree. It wasn't my ficus tree. Mine was a little lopsided, a survivor of 2 apartment moves and my own inconsistent watering schedule. This one was perfect, offensively symmetrical, standing right where my beloved crooked plant should have been. I could see it through the living room window, its dark leaves a stark silhouette against the unfamiliar glow of a new floor lamp. For a moment, my tired, travel-worn brain just refused to process it. I'd just gotten back from a 10-day business trip, a grueling but successful project that was supposed to secure my promotion. I was dreaming of dropping my bags, kicking off my heels, and collapsing into my husband Mark's arms on our sofa. But my key wouldn't turn. It slid into the lock, same as it had 1,000 times before, but it met a solid, unyielding resistance. It was like trying to push a key into a solid block of steel. I jiggled it. I pulled it out and tried again, my frustration mounting with each failed attempt. That's when I really looked, pressing my face closer to the window, the lamp, the ficus. And wait, was that a different rug? My beautiful Persian rug, the one I inherited from my grandmother, was gone. In its place was a soulless gray shag carpet that looked like it belonged in a budget hotel. A cold dread, sharp and metallic, flooded my veins. I fumbled for my phone, my fingers suddenly clumsy and slick with sweat. I dialed Mark. He answered on the 3rd ring, his voice oddly flat. "Hey, I'm home," I said, trying to keep the tremor out of my voice. "The key isn't working. Did you change the locks?" There was a pause. In the background, I could hear faint music and the tinkle of a woman's laughter. It wasn't a voice I recognized. "Listen, Sarah," he started, and my stomach plummeted. He only ever called me Sarah when he was delivering bad news. "Things have changed." "Changed? What do you mean, changed? I can't get into my own apartment, Mark. Just come down and let me in." "That's the thing," he said, his voice dropping, devoid of any emotion. "It's not your apartment anymore." The world tilted on its axis. The sounds of the city street around me, the distant siren, the rumble of a passing bus faded into a dull roar in my ears. "What are you talking about? Of course it is. My name is on the deed. It was mine before we even met." "Not anymore," he said calmly. That female laughter echoed again, closer this time, and a sick realization began to dawn. Chloe and I needed the capital to get our new business venture off the ground. We got a fantastic offer. Couldn't pass it up. Chloe, his work friend, the one he told me not to worry about, the one whose name had been popping up on his phone at odd hours for months. My blood ran cold. You sold my apartment, my grandmother's apartment. How is that even possible? You can't do that." "Remember that power of attorney you signed last year?" he asked. And the memory hit me like a physical blow. He'd had a health scare, a minor procedure he'd blown way out of proportion. He'd pleaded with me to sign it, just in case, so he could handle our finances if something went wrong. I, a trusting, loving fool, had signed it without a second thought. "You used that?" I whispered, horrified. "You used that to sell my home out from under me while I was away on a business trip?" "It was just business, Sarah. Don't be so dramatic. The money's been transferred." Panic clawed at my throat. I ended the call without another word and frantically opened my banking app. My savings account, empty. My checking account, empty. Every last cent I had ever earned, my inheritance, the money I'd been setting aside for my future, gone. Transferred to an account I didn't recognize. He'd left me with nothing. I was standing on a sidewalk in a city of millions with a suitcase full of work clothes, a dying phone, and the clothes on my back. Homeless, penniless, betrayed in the most absolute way imaginable. The streetlights began to flicker on, casting long, menacing shadows down the block. The new owners of my home turned on more lights, oblivious to the woman whose life they were now living. I was invisible, a ghost haunting my own past. Tears streamed down my face, hot and useless. My mind raced, cycling through a non-existent list of options. Shelters were full. I was too ashamed to call my parents, to admit how spectacularly I had failed. My friends would help, but they all lived in tiny apartments, and my pride was a lead weight in my gut. I sank down onto my suitcase, the rough concrete cold against my legs. Desperation was a physical thing, a crushing weight on my chest, making it hard to breathe. My world had been vaporized. Mark had won. He and his mistress were probably drinking champagne, toasting to their new life funded by the demolition of mine. But as I sat there, shivering in the evening chill, a different feeling began to push through the despair. A tiny, hard ember of pure, unadulterated rage. He thought he could just erase me. He thought I would just disappear. He was wrong. He had forgotten about the one person in my life I never ever spoke of. The one person Mark didn't even know existed. My last resort. My nuclear option. My fingers, shaking with a new kind of energy, scrolled through my contacts to a name I hadn't called in almost a decade. I pressed the button, my heart hammering against my ribs. It rang twice before he picked up. A gravelly, familiar voice grunted, "Yeah?" I took a shaky breath, the name a strange and foreign word on my tongue. "Leo?" I whispered, my voice cracking. "It's me. I need your help." There was a long silence on the other end of the line, so profound I thought he might have hung up. All I could hear was the faint crackle of the connection and my own ragged breathing. Leo was the family ghost, the older brother my parents spoke of in hushed, disappointed tones. He'd left home at 16 after a fight with our father that was the stuff of legend and had navigated the world's underbelly ever since. We hadn't spoken since our mother's funeral 9 years ago, where he stood in the back of the church in a cheap suit, looking like a caged wolf, and left before the reception. "Where are you?" he finally grunted, his voice like rocks grinding together. It wasn't a question of concern, it was a demand for coordinates. I'm outside my apartment, or what used to be my apartment." I gave him the address. "Stay put," he ordered, and the line went dead. An hour later, a battered dark blue pickup truck that looked like it had lost a fight with a tank rumbled to a stop in front of me. Leo swung himself out of the driver's seat. He looked older, harder. The years had carved deeper lines around his eyes and added a scar that cut through his left eyebrow. He didn't hug me or offer any words of comfort. He just grabbed my heavy suitcase with one hand as if it weighed nothing, tossed it into the truck bed, and jerked his head towards the passenger door. We drove in silence, away from the polished, gentrified neighborhood I had called home and into the city's gritty, industrial heart. We ended up at a dive bar called The Salty Dog, a place that smelled of stale beer and regret. He led me to a sticky booth in the back, slid a glass of amber liquid in front of me, and sat down. "Talk," he commanded, taking a long pull from his own glass. And so I did. The whole sordid story spilled out of me. The business trip, the changed locks, the ficus tree, the phone call with Mark. I told him about Chloe, the power of attorney, the drained bank accounts. As I spoke, the hysterical tears I'd been fighting back finally subsided, replaced by a cold, sharp-edged fury. My voice grew steady, my words precise. I wasn't a victim anymore, crying on a curb. I was a woman delivering a damage report. Leo listened without interruption, his gaze fixed on me, unblinking. He didn't offer platitudes or tell me it would be okay. When I finished, he was silent for a long moment, slowly turning his glass on the scarred wooden table. "The power of attorney was legit?" he asked. "Yes, my signature, notarized. I was an idiot." "So the sale is legal. You can't sue him for theft." "No," I admitted, the word tasting like ash. "Legally, he had the right. Morally, he burned my entire life to the ground for startup money." "And this new business?" he pressed. "What is it?" "Some kind of high-end lifestyle consultancy, curated living solutions, or some other garbage. They help rich people pick out art and wine. It's Chloe's brainchild." He nodded slowly, a dark look crossing his face. "Okay," he said, the single word hanging in the air with immense weight. "You have two choices. You can take what little credit you have left, find a cheap room somewhere, and try to rebuild. Or," he paused, leaning forward, his eyes locking onto mine, "we can burn his new life to the ground." There was no hesitation. "Burn it," I said, my voice a low growl I didn't recognize. A slow, cold smile touched Leo's lips for the first time. It wasn't a friendly smile. It was the smile of a predator that had just caught the scent of blood. "Good," he said. "Revenge isn't a lawsuit, it's a project, and it requires planning. Mark and his new partner think you're a ghost, defeated, broke, and gone. We use that. But to do this right, I need intel. I need to know everything about their new company, their investors, their clients, their routines, every weakness." "How am I supposed to get that?" I asked, the first flicker of doubt returning. "He won't answer my calls. I can't get near them." "You can't," Leo corrected me, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "Sarah can't. The heartbroken, betrayed wife is a liability. They'd see her coming a mile away. But someone else could get close. Someone new." He leaned back, sizing me up, his gaze analytical and unsettlingly detached. He saw the expensive but now crumpled business suit, the haircut from a trendy salon, the manicure I'd gotten for my big presentation. "He took your home, your money, your name," Leo said, his voice hard as flint. "He left you with nothing, which means you can become anything. He and this Chloe, they're in the business of selling a lifestyle. They'll need people, assistants, event planners, social media managers, people to run their new perfect world." He took one last swallow of his drink and slammed the glass down on the table with a sharp crack. "Your old life is over. Sarah is dead. Starting tomorrow, your only job is to figure out who you need to become to get hired by the man who destroyed you." Sarah Miller died in a cheap motel room with a bottle of drugstore hair dye and a pair of scissors. The woman who walked out was Anna Vance. My brother Leo, with his surprising network of shadowy contacts, had crafted a new identity for me in less than a week. He produced a flawless resume for Anna, a freelance event coordinator with glowing, and entirely fictional, references from boutique firms in other cities. He coached me on how to alter my speech, to lose the crisp, corporate cadence, and adopt a softer, more artistic inflection. I traded my power suits for bohemian chic outfits from a thrift store, swapped my contacts for thick-rimmed glasses, and dyed my signature blonde hair a mousy, forgettable brown. I practiced my new signature until my hand no longer cramped. I was a ghost, remade. The interview was surreal. I sat across from Chloe in a sterile white office that still smelled of fresh paint. She was exactly as I'd imagined, beautiful, polished, and radiating an unearned confidence. Mark wasn't there, which was a blessing. Chloe barely glanced at my resume, more interested in my vibe. I fed her the lines Leo and I had rehearsed, speaking passionately about creating immersive client experiences and narrative-driven event design. I used my inside knowledge of Mark's weaknesses, his love of flattery, his desire to appear more sophisticated than he was, to shape my answers. I suggested ideas I knew would appeal directly to his ego. I was hired on the spot as their client experience coordinator. The next 3 months were an exercise in brutal self-control. I saw Mark every day. The first time, my heart hammered so hard I thought I would faint, but he looked right through me. To him, I was just Anna, the quiet, efficient girl who organized his calendar and remembered how he took his coffee. I became invisible, a fixture in the background of their new, glittering life. And from that vantage point, I saw everything. I saw the cheap champagne they served at client meetings while billing for Dom Perignon. I saw the antique furniture they sourced from a discount warehouse. I documented every lie, every corner cut, every inflated invoice. I had access to their client lists, their financial projections, their private emails. Chloe was careless with her passwords, and Mark was arrogant. They believed they were untouchable. They were building their dream on a foundation of my stolen life, and I was meticulously cataloging the cracks. The linchpin of their business was their first major public event, the Elysian Living launch gala. It was to be their grand unveiling to the city's elite, a party for all their investors and prospective high-net-worth clients. They poured every remaining cent of my money into it, and they put me, their trusted Anna, in charge of coordinating the entire thing. The night of the gala, the rooftop ballroom was dripping with opulence. Mark and Chloe floated through the crowd, accepting congratulations, their faces flush with triumph. I stayed in the background, a headset on, calmly directing staff. No one noticed me slip away to the AV booth. At exactly 9:30 p.m., as Mark took the stage to give his triumphant keynote address, our plan went into motion. We built Elysian Living on a foundation of trust and transparency, he began, beaming under the spotlight. As he spoke, the massive screens behind him, which were supposed to be showing a sleek corporate logo, flickered. Instead of the logo, a bank statement appeared. It showed a single transfer of nearly $500,000. The account name was clearly visible, Sarah J. Miller. My name. A confused murmur rippled through the crowd. Then, the next slide. A copy of the power of attorney document, with my signature blown up for all to see. The slide after that was an email from Chloe to Mark. She's away for 10 days. That's more than enough time to close the sale and clear out the accounts. She'll never see it coming. Mark froze, his face turning ashen. Chloe stared at the screen in horror, but it didn't stop. Leo, working remotely from his grimy pickup truck blocks away, had taken control. A devastating montage flashed across the screens, scathing emails where they mocked their clients, invoices showing the true cost of their cheap materials next to the inflated prices they charged, and the grand finale, a confidential dossier on every single investor and top client in the room, detailing their private information, personal insecurities, and financial vulnerabilities, all compiled by Chloe to better manipulate them. The ballroom erupted. It was no longer a party, it was the scene of a corporate execution. Shouts of anger and betrayal filled the air as powerful people realized how thoroughly they had been conned. Their dream imploded in the space of 90 seconds. While chaos reigned, I walked calmly out of the AV booth, through the panicked crowd and into the elevator. I didn't look back. My work was done. In the pristine, empty office, I left a single item on the keyboard of my work computer, my old, useless key to the apartment they had stolen. Months later, I sat in a small cafe in a coastal town thousands of miles away, the salt-laced air warm on my skin. I read online that Mark and Chloe were facing multiple lawsuits and a federal fraud investigation. Elysian living was a toxic memory. Leo had managed to anonymously claw back a significant chunk of my money from their accounts in the ensuing chaos, wiring it to me as a severance package. It wasn't everything, but it was enough. It was a beginning. They hadn't just left me homeless, they had made me fearless. They had taken my life and in doing so had given me a new one, forged not in love and trust, but in the cold, clean fire of retribution. And for the first time in a very long time, I was free.